All right, so purpose of this little video here is just talk about a few different kinds of designs of experiments that a person can do, and just kind of go from there. So I think the first one I want to talk about is a matched pairs design. This one here is pretty cool in terms of the one we see this a lot with is I think in mostly I would say in my daily life scenario I would say this I see this in a scenario where you do a before and after test. Okay, so here's the fella. All right, you give him a before. Hey, fatty, can you run this? Can you run a mile? Yeah, I sure can. Take me 12 minutes. Awesome. All right, you do it later. Hey, it took you 8 minutes. Whoa, you really improved. All right, and you got this gal here, and wow, she looks, whatever. She looks like she fit the part. Maybe this guy again went from 12 to 8 minutes before, and then after. And this chick here, she went. She ran 11 before, and she ran 10 after. I don't know. Another gal. There they are. Everyone's doesn't really matter. You're like, wait, Jay, shouldn't we size and plumpness and how big they are and so forth? No, here's the deal. We're comparing them versus themselves. And so you're showing improvement. Okay. Now this one's pretty cool from the standpoint of, okay, for instance, my buddy taught PE for years, still does. He just doesn't teach here anymore. And he would do this all the time in terms of this. And then, of course, the idiot principles we'd have over the years. Jay, you should do like Corey does and make the kids take a before and after. And I'm like, well, that sounds cute and all. I said, but the difference is anybody can run. I mean, everybody knows how to run for crying out loud. Or everybody can lay down on the bench and try to lift the bar, They didn't require a whole lot of, whatever. But then after you put them through their paces for a few weeks, months, whatever, we hope to show improvement. God, I hope so. Sure, of course. But it makes sense when you do that sort of thing. Now in math, like, geez, hey, all right, kids, today I want you to tell me what you know about analysis of variance. Go. But Mr. Groom, I don't know anything. I know. But write it down. Hey, you all got zeros. You're all a bunch of morons. All right. Funny story. The same principal one time we were talking about this, and he says you should give them before and after test. And I said, so let me tell me this, Chris. If a kid goes from a 0 to a 20%, or it goes from a 0 to 100%, which one had the better improvement? And he goes, well, the 0 to 100. I'm like, well, technically, they both are infinite improvement. And he kind of went, wait, what? Exactly. But before and after is a great one. You can either do this a lot on twins. So you have two people from the same group, they're the same family, everything's identical. One gets randomly selected to be in one trial, the other one goes in the other trial. For instance, so twin A maybe gets randomly selected to go here, twin B here, one drug versus another drug, a drug versus a placebo, whatever it happens to be, and then test it out. We won't probably do a ton of that. You won't in your daily lives. This is not something we typically do. We don't have access to a bunch of twin data. So yeah, probably not going to be that one. Okay, so that's the first one. That's called matched pairs. Okay, so the second one is called a block design. And so there's a couple different ways you could think of this one. So one of the books that I like to refer to does a lot of breaking them into talk about a farmer, which is that's what really makes me happy about it, because it just really kind of floats my boat. Back in the day, we used to do these field trials all the time, and so like this particular one here might be randomly selected to get, and again, these can be different fertilizer amounts. Okay, different amounts of not different types, but different amounts of fertilizer. So 10 pounds the acre, that's ridiculous. I say 100 pounds the acre, 120, 90, whatever pounds for the acre. And then if this was a situation where you could irrigate it, you could do it a couple different ways. You could just do straight up dry land, don't irrigate at all. And you could irrigate, light. I just give you some medium, heavy, right? That's one way to do it. Out in the when I was a kid over in Eastern Washington, every year you'd go in, there'd be this sheet, and it would have listed out the newest wheat varieties that had come out from Washington State. And Oregon State does the same thing. Every ag school does the same thing. And you look at and see which of these breeds of wheat did the best in your area. Okay, so there's this one called Stevens, which is a phenomenal wheat crop product. Came out in 86, 87, 85, somewhere in that neighborhood. And it came out in response to, had been a huge problem with Russian wheat aphids. and so they were somewhat resistant to that, and it was also pretty resistant to foot rot. Um, uh, Foot rot is a fungus that attacks the root of the side of the plant, the stem of the plant, right down by the ground. Okay, and when it does that, it's normally for us, because Eastern Washington, we dryland farm, we don't irrigate anything, and it would be a situation where we'd have a wet early summer, and we were doing a new kind of cropping, tillage practices back then. So there's more trash, like left over from the previous year, on top of the soil, and that would kind of hold moisture, and that would get against there, and then that would kind of help the fungus grow. And so Stevens was very good at not being affected by that. And so those two reasons were two reasons why it was kind of developed. It also, produced pretty heavy as well. But what you could do is you could go down there and you look at different places in the county, or the Eastern Washington. So Prescott is probably one of the lightest areas out there west of Prescott toward the Tri-Cities. There is, like, it gets, and I'm not joking here, maybe 9 to 12 inches of rain a year, maybe 10, somewhere in the neighborhood. That's it. That's all they get. Okay. The interesting thing about it there, though, is that when it cuts loose and really starts to rain, those suckers can double what they expected their yield to be. They might expect 40 or 50 bushel the acre. They might get, well, let's say more like 30. Let's say they expected 30, 40 bushel the acre. They could almost get 65, 70, 80 bushel if they got the right rains at the right times, and more rain than usual. Pretty good soil, but it's really light, and it doesn't have any, they don't get any water down there to speak of. Walla Walla, right around Walla Walla, is crazy good soil, and they get plenty of rain, and it's really flattish ground, and so it gets a lot of sunlight all year long. We farmed about 30 miles from there, and we had really steep hills, so we got a little less rain than they did, about the same, not a little, maybe a skosh less, but mostly the problem for us was we grew on these really steep hillsides, and so we were always behind them because we didn't get the amount of sunlight that they did, direct sunlight. Okay. And then maybe you get them up around Pullman, and I don't know where else. Yeah, by Cheney or somewhere. I don't know, whatever. See, all these different places. Well, all those climates are different, and so it might be a situation where really piling on the fertilizer around Prescott didn't help at all, but cutting it back, maybe down to this level, maybe C is a less than A, that would really help. This right here called, again, random blocks. So you decide who gets which treatment in this case. Okay, it's a similar situation. Okay, we could do this with all of them. In fact, you could, at Prescott, you would have all of the different fertilizer types, right? And then at Walla Walla, you'd have all the different fertilizer types. Again, this would be the field at Walla Walla. You see this? The field in Walla Walla would be chopped up into pieces. And what we'd do is we'd go in and compare. We'd randomly select, okay, this guy here. And we randomly select this one, and this one, and this one, and that one, and this one, and whatever. We'd randomly select a bunch of plot pieces, and we compare them to randomly selected pieces from Prescott, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The idea being is that the randomness comes after the fact. Okay? So in other words, they planted the soil. Yes. We fertilized it. Sweet. We're all done. Now at the end is where you're really coming in and doing the random bit, because you're coming in and saying, all right, listen, we're going to randomly select those blocks out there in the field, and we're going to select those blocks to compare to the blocks from Prescott, the blocks from Pullman, et cetera, et cetera. And this is kind of a neat way of doing it. So now, again, for you, this might be a situation where you have, I think of a good example of this one here. Just a variety of, let me think of one real quick. I'll pause. Oh, here's an example that's more from my life, is when it comes to teaching. So let's say you want to try a couple of different curriculums. Okay. Clearly you have to be careful of this, because if I taught one curriculum and somebody else taught another curriculum, it might be a difference in me teaching. You with me? Now, it's possible if I hate the one curriculum, I do a worse job of it. There's this thing called pride. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do a good job of both. But that could be part of it as well. So we'll look into that. But the one way to account for that then is if I do all the teaching of all the curriculum. In other words, I teach a class of both of them. My buddy Bob teaches one. My buddy George teaches another one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's blocks all the way across the map. George teaches the one curriculum, and then he teaches the other curriculum too. So then I will go and I'll sample, say 5 randomly selected kids. Now, by the way, we randomly distributed them into all the classrooms. Okay, we don't listen to somebody belly aching because my precious child is not going to be with Mrs. So and so, and da 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 da. All right, for whatever. And if this were the case, we'd have to have them randomly sorted. We cannot have people. Well, I want them with this person because he's the best teacher, or whatever. We can't have that. Can't have it. Okay. Now, when we look at that, okay, again, that's that situation there. Now, that one's a little goofy. The crop one's a little goofy too, comparatively. There's another one that falls into as well. So I'm gonna show it to you here. It is a block type design, but the one where I have the different teachers in that case, there's something else we're going to talk about that one. Okay. So when we look at that, that's just the idea there. Again, these guys, any differences here and here between these guys and these ones down here is not because of wall of soil. It's because of the differences in the fertilizer. Okay. And when you come across this direction, any difference here, here, these guys versus those guys is going to be about location. Okay. So we can test for both of those things, and we can also see if there's a difference, or in other words, if there's some kind of interaction, we call it. Okay. One I always like to talk about is when during the football game, the old Viagra commercial comes on. And don't take Viagra if you take for heart pain. What was that? I wasn't listening. Right. So you're an older feller, and you're taking the little blue pill along with your heart medicine. And turns out, your blood pressure medicine, turns out that there can be an interaction there. Okay. Turns out that Viagra, very cool drug, in that it has what it was tested for, what it was developed for, was to reduce blood pressure. And it does a phenomenal job of that. It has a bizarre side effect, a very bizarre and very marketable side effect. And so as a result, they start making that the primary effect. And now one of its side effects is it lowers blood pressure. A lot? Yeah, quite a bit, sure. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens if you take that along with your thing for high blood pressure? Oh, look at that. All of a sudden, now you have an interaction and you're dead because you have no blood pressure. Whoops. Hey, I drank a little drink of whiskey before I go to bed. Cool. Nice. Does it calm you down, help you sleep better? It does, yes. Yeah. What about the sleeping pill you take? I take those too. That's great. Yeah. What if I wash them down with the Jack Daniels? Whoops. A little thing called interaction, and you're dead. Okay. Some things it doesn't matter. But a lot of times there is what we call interaction. So in this situation, you can actually see that. It could be, how much powder you use, what kind of bullets you use. Okay. Any number of things like that. That would be a situation for that. I will say this, is I don't expect you to do thousands and thousands. Let's say you're making cookies. I don't expect you to bake 87,000 batches. Okay. Expect to make a few batches of each one and then randomly select them. Okay. Here's the cookie sheet. Nice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I'm randomly selecting number 11. Awesome. Number 6. Awesome. And number 1. Sweet. And you look at those cookies and they look, it's not fair. I got 3 crappy cookies. Well, pal, if you got 3 crappy cookies out of 12, that probably means that your ratio of crappy cookies is pretty high. Huh? Mm-hmm. So kind of keep that in mind as you go along. Okay. Oops. All right. The next one is called a factorial design. Factorial sounds like you're taking all the things into consideration. That's exactly right. So factorial is very similar to the one I just talked about, where it's the teacher and the curriculums. So if there was 3 teachers, Pete, Jody, Sue, nice, and 2 curriculums, boom, 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 curriculum A, curriculum B, boom. This is a situation where there's 6 outcomes, 3 times 2, that's the factorial part of that coming up. Okay. Um, Again, whether some of them can be classified very much like factorial. Some of them are like, that's a slam dunk factorial. Period. End of story. Some are block designs. Slam dunk. Period. End of story. And then there's a few that are kind of like, well, it feels like both. And I would not argue with you on some of those. Okay. On a car, there are 4 positions: right, rear, right front, left front. Awesome. And let's say you're going to try, I don't know, 3 different kinds of tires: tire A, tire B, tire C. Does it matter where they are on the car as far as wear goes? Well, yeah. It's a front-wheel drive car. Front wheels are going to wear faster, clearly, because they do most of the braking and they do most of the acceleration, obviously. They do all the acceleration. And so rear-wheel drive opposite, well, for the acceleration, but it's still the fronts brake more. Cornering is hard on front tires, obviously. But some of them are going to be worse than others. And so position on a car matters. Okay. Now, something to think about, you're like, well, wait a minute. What car are we using? Well, I thought we'd try the Michelins on a RAV4, and I thought we'd try the Toyos on a Subaru, and I thought we'd try these things here on a Cadillac. And you're like, wait, that's weird. It is weird. And so whatever you'd want to do here, you'd want to change, you'd want to compare them on similar things. So, for instance, if you're Consumer Reports, you're going to do this, and you're going to test passenger vehicle tires, like with front-wheel drive cars, and you will probably just get Camrys or whatever in the Sam Hill you get your hands on quickly, and you'll just do them. Boom, Camrys done. There you go. It's there. All the things we tested on were Camrys. That takes everything else out of the situation. But my Nissan wears tires different than a Camry, Jay. I doubt it. I doubt it. We'll see. In that case, you could go back and redo the thing and see if there's a difference from one car brand to the other car brand. Maybe in your mind, the left fronts take most of the abuse. Okay, well, if that's true, then you could just compare a bunch of different cars with the same tires, all on the left fronts, and then the difference would be, which car, is the worst on the tires or whatever it happens to be. This one, again, is one where it's pretty straightforward in terms of, that makes sense. You wouldn't want to just try all the Michelins on the fronts, let's say, and all the Goodriches on the backs, because, again, your backs are going to wear less on a front-wheel drive car. They just are, fact. They last longer back there. They're not going to get abused if you have camber wear or toe wear. It's not going to happen. Okay, and so you'd want to take that into account. Boy, these BF Goodriches, they just last forever. I bought those because Consumer Reports said they're great, and they're the worst tire I've ever seen in my life. OMG, gosh. And they're like, wait a minute. When it turns out in the test, they only ever tested BF Goodriches on the rear of a car. Whoops. Again, you're looking for a way to randomize and then also to eliminate bias by doing so. All right, last couple things I want to chat about are blind and single blind. Typically, if I just say blind, single blind is what we're talking about, or double blind tests. Now, in this situation, I don't really need to do this for the most part. We don't need to do this too much. I feel like as engineers, for the most, or technical people like yourselves, you can handle the truth that this isn't working, or this would work better, or whatever. Some people can't handle that and so have to lie about it, whatever. But you'll see it. It happens all over the place. But the idea is that we want to make sure that we are blinding the test subject from what's happening. So certainly I wouldn't tell people that if they're in a drug trial, let's say no, not a drug trial. They're in what would be a good one? Yeah, well, a drug trial would be fine. Let's do a drug trial. Some kind of a drug trial, we could just hide from them whether they're on a real pill or the fake pill. Turns out that you're a little moody in the morning, so I get you into my study. I'm looking for people who are moody in the morning. Your boyfriend or girlfriend or wife or somebody, your husband, somebody calls me and says, "Hey, listen, I got someone to be in your group. They're a quite moody person in the morning." Oh, sweet. So come in. We randomly assign you to a group. Here's a pill. Take that every day. Next 30 days, We're going to keep track of your mood, see where you're at. Okay. Some of you will get happier regardless because you think you're doing something. That's called the placebo effect. Others of you getting some actual drug, maybe it actually works. Of course, if it's no difference, then obviously your drug sucks. Something that's literally how that works. But if the patient knew they were on the drug, or thought really hard that they were on the drug, we can actually get that placebo effect in some things. Obviously, your body's not going to cure itself of cancer or, whatever. One moment, please. Hello. All right, sorry about that. I got called away to help a buddy. So single blind, things like this, we want to, for instance, let's say we're doing a test to see which Miracle-Gro or black gold potting soil or what have you. The best case is to have someone out there who doesn't know which one's which. And in that case, then no one can be accused that we're giving the Miracle-Gro the better, more water, whatever, preferential, something else. That way we're just growing the tomato plants, whatever it is we're growing. When it's all said and done, hey, this plot had the biggest tomatoes, whatever we're looking for. Hell, let's see what it is. Oh, hey, look at that. It's black gold. All right, cool. That keeps us from doing any kind of bias in that case. In the case of a double blind, it'd be more like the case of doing it on people. If you're doing tests on people, so you're doing drug tests, for instance. Like I mentioned in class, House used to be my favorite show until Dr. Foreman got his girlfriend into a study he was running, which is completely unethical, but whatever. And then her IV was leaking, and so he touched it and fixed it, and then he got something on his fingers. And then he came out and he told the nurse, hey, that it was leaking. And she's like, was it stinky and gross? And he's like, no, it was, didn't smell at all. Oh, well, then she's not on the drug. All right, wait, well, And at that point, I was done. I can't deal with it anymore, okay? Because the point of double blind is, the first blind, of course, is for me as the researcher. I don't want to know. The second blind is I don't want the patient to know, okay? Because if the patient knows they're not getting the drug, or they are getting the drug, they can counteract effects. All right. Now, if I don't know and I'm talking to you, if I'm the doctor, my bedside manner, and I'm chirpy and cheery and happy with everybody, then my bedside manner is not like, oh, this poor gal, she's not on the right drug. Well, she won't be around here much longer. Yeah, people pick up on those cues, and that becomes another variable in and of itself. So double blind, unfortunately, we don't have to do too much of that. Hey, look what we make. We make chips at work, Mr. Room there. And so if we're doing these chips, turns out, maybe we're trying a different process, and maybe we're blind on some of the process there, or whatever. We don't have to double blind the chips, because my behavior or my bedside manner towards a piece of silicone is, doesn't have any impact on a piece of silicone. Only humans are affected by that because we're nuts sometimes. Anyway, that's what I want to say about that. So on your project, whether that data, wherever it comes from, and now there's going to be specific things that you may choose to do for your project, and I'm going to leave that open-ended. Okay, again, you can set up your own example, make your own data right now. If you have data from work and you'd like to do some research on that, I'm totally down with that. You got some research from something else. It's your data, though. At least something you're intimately acquainted with. And I don't mean, well, I know a lot about World of Warcraft, and so I'm going to go online and grab a bunch of data from that. No. You must use your own data, or something that you're really tightly with. So in other words, it might be work data, but it's something you deal with every day. All right, that's all I got to say about that. Goodbye.